start. You can lay it and start off, Aparna.
Okay, so I think in our last meeting, we had all discussed what to do next, and I think Harish was of the view to do a survey and stuff like that. Then Subhashini had sent a trail mail. She's twice spoken about all the issues that she's faced. So we started looking around to see what possibilities are there. Can somebody kind of give us the state of this Horamavu ward, and can we kind of create a plan for Horamavu? And a little bit with some of our government workings, of course, there's a lot to be desired and we're all quite frustrated. But one of the ways to approach it is to, put a fresh plan together, have our own way of approaching it, and start everything with a clean slate with the government team saying, this is what we want for Horamavu, getting more and more people involved to chase that, which is the plan of how to take things forward. So with that, I had reached out to Janagraha, and they had heavily recommended Sobia. So they have seen Sobia's work and the approach that Sobia and her organization Sensing Local has. So that's why we invited Sobia to give us a brief of how to kind of take it forward and also see whether we can kind of work with her for a plan for Ward 25. So with that, over to you, Sobia.
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to ask Naveen to share screen. Just to give everyone a background here. So Sensing Local is basically a think tank that's been, or rather a do tank that has been working in this space for around 4.5 years. We are primarily architects and urban planners, as well as based on the projects that come in, we bring in sociologists, we bring in, designers, we bring in economists. So all of this is based on what we sort of bring to the table. Our focus has been the environment and to work at the local level, as our name suggests. And one of the things that we have been trying to also chasing for some time now is, ever since the ward committee is set up, is to understand what is the power of localized planning and how can it actually influence budgeting. And so we have, in fact, in the past, we've done a couple of studies as well. We did a study which was based on observing 22 and documenting 22 ward committees to understand what are the challenges and where should they sort of move forward. That is one report that we sort of also submitted along with other partners like Janagraha, Reap Benefit, and other organizations that were also working with ward committees. This was almost a year and a half back. Post that, we continue to understand how can I make this planning process very simple for citizens to do. And that has been our goal. So we've really been evolving this, and we've now come up with something called a state of the ward framework. Now, the state of the ward framework, interestingly, what it does is it borrows from the Livable Cities document for which has been created by MOUD and Smart Cities India. It evaluates, it gives a framework to evaluate where a ward stands at, and then tells you where you can move ahead in planning. For smart cities, the purpose that this was used for was to help assess where the city stood, and so what would make it smart in terms of the interventions. But for Bangalore's wards, what we have done is we have actually customized this whole thing. Next, Naveen. Yeah, so like I said, I mean, where does the need come for doing something like this, right? So we already have what you find on the right-hand side is the 17-point mandate of the ward committee. The first piece of that mandate says that prepare and submit a ward development scheme to the corporation for allocation of funds. What does this mean? Now, what is a ward development scheme has not been clarified, and how can a ward committee actually go about planning where to allocate funds? Both these pieces are not defined, but yet it is there as a mandate. So our exploration actually started here. So what could this mean? So, even if you say to what extent can we as citizens plan at our ward level, and what all can we influence? And what has to happen at city level budgets and all of that, which I can't really influence much. And so we sort of looked very closely at all the 17-point mandate, which includes everything, right? From solid waste management to sanitation, public toilets, disaster management, your anything related to your beneficiary schemes, housing, all of that is coming under, including things like afforestation, right? Which is amazing that we have this beautiful mandate, but the question became on how to put this mandate in and how do we act on this mandate. Next.
second. So it's just, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So what we tried to do, and we've done this now in Ward 57 and for Ward 40, actually for Ward 65 as well, where Mr. Manjunath is the nodal officer. So what we decided is, like, we actually need to evaluate the wards, baseline them, and actually evaluation is against performance indicators. So for instance, if I look at how do I evaluate a solid waste management system, the indicator would be pulled out from Swachh Bharat, the Swachh Bharat mandate, as well as from our bylaws, BBMP bylaws. It can't be only Swachh Bharat because our bylaws are very comprehensive as well. Similarly for public toilets. If I look at education, I will have to look at the RTE norms that come into play for my, or what do I see, how to evaluate my government schools. Similarly, it comes in whether it's health, whether it's government services, all of that have parameters that I can evaluate with, which is present either to some extent in the livable cities framework, or in Bangalore or Karnataka, we have really already derived and set the standard for ourselves. So this study sort of brings together all these standards so that I can collect data, I can evaluate it across multiple parameters, and then say, where do I start budgeting? Where do I score less? Where do I score more? So the first piece of it is physical mapping and evaluation of the ward. So this will capture all your ward level information, public infrastructure, amenities. All of this is done in digital format, which means it's a one-time exercise. We can have a live map up that is publicly accessible with data even for people to download or whatever they want to do. This data, whatever is collected, is assessed using the state of the ward framework. And I'll explain the state of the ward framework in the next slide. The second is demographic makeup of the ward. What another very interesting thing that this did is, because we are looking at housing and all these other parameters, we were able to geographically demarcate certain areas based on population, housing type, even based on the kinds of issues they face. Because usually if you see a low income housing area, the issues are very different, as opposed to when you see a high income independent houses versus probably a much more dense multi-dwelling unit kind of a situation, right? And these boundaries can potentially turn into forming the area sabhas. Which is a next step also of ward committees, where they have to have representatives from all the areas present so that the voices are actually brought to the forefront, because their challenges are different. So it also gives you some level of an understanding of how do I divide my ward, further to extend into having area sabhas. The third piece was investigating the expenditure versus on-ground implementation of BBMP funds. This was done using the BBMP data, and BNP has put out another on their portal. Also, they've managed to break out this data into the last 5 years and multiple components. What we did is we customized this data and sort of sliced it based on our parameters that we are assessing. So say if I say public toilets, I'll be able to pull out what has been spent on public toilets for the last 5 years. Because I've assessed it and said where it is has it been enough? Has it been not been enough? Where should I spend it going forward? So all of that linkage to the past budgetary expenses is something that comes in. Next. So the state of the ward framework, as I said, I'll show you an example, Aparna, also to say how is this coming. So we will touch on two features. We are touching on housing and I'm touching on sanitation. These two features will show you how it actually flows, though there are 19 odd features, right? So we've got this livable standards in cities, which actually had 24 features, which is put in the smart city proposal. Out of this, what applies to Bangalore's wards is actually just 19 features. We've actually added a couple more also because, they're like, say, disaster management is something we've added on. They are then further divided into 12 categories, and through indicators, they actually, which we are calling as indicators. Now, each indicator is then put in based on whatever we assess. I will tell you which scenario you fall in, scenario 1, 2, 3, and 4. So there is a method we've come up with to evaluate this scenario, and you will see that in the example as well. So based on, if I say you're in scenario 1, which is my worst, it will also tell you what you have to do to get to scenario 4, because it's in a descriptive manner and not really in a complex sort of understanding in that sense. Naveen, can you move next?
Yeah.
So these features basically, so you'll see like in governance, we've got citizen participation, government services. In land use and housing, we've got mixed use, compact, and as well as looking at housing and inclusivity, which is largely focused on slums. Then in parks and open spaces, we have parks and open spaces as well. Here we are also looking at recreational spaces as well as things like sports facilities as well. Then we have sanitation and waste, which focuses on public toilet solid waste management. Water and sewage focuses on wastewater management, water supply, and water management. Here, water management focuses mainly on aspects like rainwater harvesting and what are you doing for water recharge. Next. We've got power supply, which at least gives you what is the power supply. If there is any, for instance, if people are relying on any alternate energy that's there, in some cases you find that has actually happened in very small pockets. Transportation, we're looking at basically transportation in terms of your public transport as well as your, private transport, roads, etc., traffic included, and we look at walkability as a piece. Then we've got air pollution. This also is actually trying to, the reason we put this in is also to try and push for more localized monitoring of air pollution, though it is not very active at the moment at the ward, but it is a useful thing to have. Then we have education, health, safety, security, and disaster management. So what is the process we follow, right, to do this exercise? So what we do is we first start with building a core team. This core team has to be along with the citizens of the ward. We found that to be most useful from two perspectives. One is there is a much quicker understanding sought from based on what the experiences are there of the local residents as well. So this exercise can happen much faster than outsider set of volunteers coming in. Of course, we have our support team that will be there for all these volunteers. The second thing is with both the wards that we've done the exercise with, we found that during the exercise itself, there is so much of empowerment of the citizen volunteers itself. It's because you suddenly get an understanding of the whole ward at one go, which probably never existed before, and it's never come together before. So even to sensitize and empower citizens within the ward to start becoming more aware of what is in the ward and what is the entire picture of the ward, this exercise has been very useful, which is why we stress on having a core team of at least 10 to 15 volunteers. The second piece is the data collection and mapping. So we do this by layers. So we actually focus on getting into the data across each layer. And what we do is we also do our evaluation. So we have certain, like say, if you are going to a public toilet, there is a small form that helps you evaluate that public toilet. Similarly, for maybe a transfer point or a transfer station for waste, or for a mustering location, or if I look at, say, maybe a school. So all of these have small evaluation forms, which are very quick to sort of fill in forms, which will happen in a sort of much more easier manner to then quantify and say, where does it stand at? Additionally, what we do in this is we also have conversations with the government officials. So we have a set of questions for a BWSSB official, BESCOM official, BBMP solid waste management, BBMP lakes, BBMP parks. All these officials, forest officers are spoken to, and there's a whole set of questions. And we've also been able to extract from the BBMP website who are these people right now in charge, though I do understand that because they change so often, that the citizens of the ward are far more, or the residents of the ward are far more equipped with who's the latest, engineer or official on ground. The third is capturing citizen priorities. This is slightly more qualitative stuff, is where we actually do some level of engagement with certain citizens. So for example, even at slums, or if we do it with our volunteer team itself, try to just understand what are, issues that people think are relevant to them. And this actually plays very well, because when you compare it with the data that is collected and the framework that's built, you either see that sometimes what happens is the citizen priorities may not be in sync with the data, what the data is talking about. For instance, if I look at, maybe a community or a resident association may want to actually put in funds to rejuvenate an entire park or a lake. However, we see that the slum area there, also in the same ward, does not even have a public toilet, and they practice open defecation. So, you sort of start bringing in these nuances, so we can bring it to the table and then say, okay, now what can our priorities be based on data? So we'd like to start sort of get both of these together to then help build these priority sectors. Then all of this sort of feeds into building the sectoral understanding of the ward, which is our state of the ward. And then we move into prioritization of issues and actions to actually see what exactly can happen and how do we come up with what are the main priorities in the ward that need to go in for budgeting. Next.
Yeah.
It's facilitated by us itself, Aparna, these discussions on citizen priorities. So it's a very like informal discussion that we do as well with the group of citizens that are there. And when we go, so even when we go to do the mapping, like we speak to the slum residents and stuff like that, there is a conversation that even our citizen volunteers have had with them. So bringing that back. So we actually culminate our mapping exercise into a citizen priority discussion exercise after we've gone and completed and touch base with everyone. So it's not specific that you will get the person from the slum in the room, but it is just that the person who's gone to the slum has already captured certain nuances and questions, and we sort of discuss that as a team after the mapping. So next, coming into the timeline, so we see this as an end-to-end 3-week exercise, which is including the final report and final presentation that we will be creating. It's already put down. So we sort of in week 1, we build the volunteer team, we identify the relevant features of the ward. So actually out of the 19 features as well, if we sort of feel that there are certain features which on discussion with you all, we see that, okay, certain things are resolved, but others are not resolved. And we want to give that priority for maybe this year's budget. And we did that for Ward 45 because, of course, budgeting is also sort of happening now, where we prioritize just around 10 of the 19 features because the others are sorted. Like they have water supply, so they know they don't want to look into that at all. So like there's certain things on how we can also prioritize, or we could go with all 19. The secondary data collection is done for each of these features. So by now we know where all to pull this secondary data from. So we spend time to extract that. In week 2, we do interview with government officials. The reason we do that first is because we also try to bring in their perspective and what they know about the ward and their challenges, which will also help to some extent bring them on board for the exercise. So for instance, when we did Ward 45 or Ward 57, we did have a lot of government officials involved even whilst we were doing the exercise, which is a huge, I think also, it's a huge, it's not either or, they are very much a part of this plan making process. And so the quicker we involve them in the process, the better it is, because if they are empowered and they also understand what is missing, they are the ones who are actually going to be doing the budgeting at the end. So it's very important to include them in the process, right? Even whether it's facilitation and then, sort of bringing them in at the presentation stage, but at least involve them, whether it's organization of it or whatever. Then we've got the on-ground mapping of infrastructure. After that, we do a training. So on-ground mapping is something that we do with some core citizen volunteers and secondary data. After that, we build a larger team of maybe we need 15 to 20 volunteers that will have to help us with with actually assistance to actually assess this infrastructure. This is basically like we do it either like on the weekends. For Malleshwaram, Ward 45, Ward 65, we finished that over literally just a day or 2 days. And that was about it for when we have that many volunteers. Then we capture insights from volunteers, which is the engagement process. We then do the budget analysis, which is done by the Sensing Local team looking at data that's available. The data analysis, base maps, draft presentation. So we do the draft presentation and we share it with the team of volunteers to get inputs to see if anything is missing. Do we have to add anything more? And then we finally do the final presentation, which is then submitted to the nodal officer. So that's basically our timeline that we follow. I'm going to take you through just the example of CV Ramanagar. Yes, we can definitely get students as well, Aparna. That is, it's a good way. And if they are students from, we can do also a combination of students and citizens from within the ward, which is also a way to sort of go forward. So absolutely, that is also possible. Because, Ward 25 is also a fairly large ward. Like Malleshwaram was a much smaller ward. CV Ramanagar also not as big, I think, as Ward 25. So, it'll be good to see how we can double up on that to finish this in a much faster manner. So what we have here is basically, it's a summary slide, and I will show you the details for 2 features. So what you see here on the thing is on the left is the scenarios, 1 being the lowest, 4 being the most. So the dots that are there actually on this side is the scoring of where they stood for that. On the right hand side is the budget allocation over the last 5 years of saying, okay, how much of the budget was actually allocated in every year. What is even this is based on the scale of it. So actually what you see is like sanitation, you realize that, say, if I look at sanitation, there's barely any budget allocated. You also realize that 5 of the 6 slums, and these were all slums that have been there for minimum 10 to 30 years. They don't have any community toilet and they practice open defecation. So you already see there is a mismatch of funds versus the aspect of what we're talking about. In health, actually, health was a very interesting thing because we realized everybody in the slums actually go to private clinics, despite there being a PHC there. And then when we went and assessed the PHC, we realized the PHC doesn't give many facilities at all, actually, for even slum dwellers to come over there and utilize those. So you see all these, really these nuances that come about in saying that, okay, what is actually gone off? Similarly, housing and inclusiveness, we see that there is, though there is budgets allocated to build low-income housing, they've all been unspent. Why has this been unspent? Why is it actually not resulted in formalized housing for these communities? That is something we don't yet know, or we don't really understand yet. So it's something to raise a question against. So we can move next. So this is the housing and inclusiveness. So I'm just going to explain how the format works. So this is one of the parameters under land use and housing. What it gives on the right hand side is the definition. So a livable ward has sufficient housing for all income groups and promotes integration among social groups. So this is the base definition of what we mean by housing and inclusiveness, right? When you move next. This is the physical and social infrastructure mapping. So what we did over here is we mapped multiple types of housing. It's just to understand the fabric of it. Where is low-income housing? Where are the urban villages? Where are the slums? Where are individual houses most located? Where are multi-dwelling houses most located? Where are small apartments located? Where are large apartments located? And where are my gated communities? So what you understand is you very clearly get a demarcation based on that in this fabric. And you also understand when I later on move into understanding challenges, you'll actually see those challenges very clearly as well. Next. So these are the assessment parameters. So for instance, one is what type of housing is dominant in the ward. So we realize actually Ward 57 has large number of multi-dwelling units and small apartments, which is a big component of what it's turned into, as opposed to even independent, which ensures that we have a good density, but also has its own sort of other aspects that are related to it, which may be problematic going forward. Next. Then we look at affordability. Another actually very interesting thing is we realize that if you look at the, this we pulled out actually from your databases online that actually give the land prices as well and rental prices. So we realize that the land value ranges from 3,300 to 12,300, which is actually quite an interesting thing because it allows for all income groups to actually exist within the same ward. As well as we saw the rental housing in terms of the slums and how much they pay. So of course, here in this ward, you find all kinds of housing that is present here in terms of affordability as well. Next. Then we went into what is the state of the slums, right? Because, you know, these are the most vulnerable groups that are there. So we realized that 2 of these slums are notified. We sort of went in and understood that, okay, over 60% are actually looking at private or no man's land adjacent to railway tracks and the lakes. Next. We did a little more detailed understanding of how long, what is their type, their year of existence, number of houses, what is the typology of housing, the main occupation, where did they come from, basic services, water supply, toilets, power, and waste. These are 4 things we wanted to look at as saying that these base at least have to be given as amenities, let alone everything else, right? And we realized that most of the places is either not there or it's partial. For these actually being there for the last 10, 15, 20, and 30 years. It's amazing that they've continued to coexist, be there, but not have any of these facilities being granted to them. Next. So we realized that the housing is available at all income levels, but we it is segregated across these. We also realized that there is, for all income groups, there is housing that can be available. So what we see is it sort of fits in scenario 3. The reason being that there is a mix and there is a potential for people to also move into low income housing from a slum area if they were empowered and given their basic amenities. Next. So this is basically the budget allocation. So we've looked at the last 5 years of budget, and what we do is we raise where there has been unspent. And so we realize that most of the budget has been unexecuted. And the reason for it, of course, is something that we haven't got an answer on yet. But why has there been no attempt to look into rehabilitation? How have they been living into all of this? So all of this has sort of been looked at as well in terms of looking at housing. Coming to security, police is something that to Aparna's question as well. Security, police treatment is all actually something that we're looking at in safety and security as a layer. So yes, that has been looked at as a different layer as well. Next. So next is sanitation, and I'll sort of wrap it up after this because it's the last. There are a lot more features, but I'll just sort of show you these two. So here, of course, a livable ward has no open defecation and full supply of toilets based on the population. Now, this is a very important aspect. One is to say that there should be no open defecation and there should be toilets as per the actual requirement. So if you see here in the physical and social infrastructure, we did a mapping of all the toilets. After that, as well as looking at its correlation to certain aspects, right? So we put in commercial land use, we put in bus stops, and we put in mustering locations. The reason we put this in is because these are the places where you have this floating population that requires public toilets. And hence, you have to have them within the proximity of it. When it comes to open defecation, we also identified open defecation zones. But along with that, we've marked out lakes, we've marked out the slums, and we've marked out the railway lines, because these tend to be the common zones where people actually move to defecate. So this is why it's important also to see it in context and not just saying that I will have a mapping of toilets and with no correlation to who is going to use those toilets. Next. So just to sort of place it there, so we've pulled in from Swachh Bharat over here. So we've got a definition of what a public toilet is. So there is two aspects to it. There's a public toilet and there's a community toilet. Public toilet is basically for all my public areas. Community toilets is largely for slums. The normative standards for both are different. And that is very rarely actually also visited and done. And even when we look at within BBMP, there is not a clear demarcation done for both these kinds of toilets and what needs to be given at the toilet. So you see that there is this norm already that's given by the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Next, we'll just go into how that's been utilized. So my first analysis parameter, how accessible are public toilets in Ward 57? So what we did is we actually put, so the distance that is there, so we put it as a radius along a 10-minute walking radius along the public toilets, each of these public toilets. And we said, okay, how far is it, or do any of these areas, so the commercial areas, the two main commercial areas, the 3 bus stands and the 2 mustering locations. From them, are they all have access to the public toilets? So we saw, this 1 kilometer buffer from there. So we saw that actually that all of them had access to public toilets. So we realized, okay, on accessibility, we are good. Next. Now you see, okay, what is the quality of infrastructure of these public toilets? So you also see that, okay, are these in functioning, not functioning? Are they maintained, not maintained? Are they accessible in terms of being disabled friendly? All of this is calculated, right? Next. So we realized that obviously that they're not disabled friendly, but of course, all of them seem to be at least there and functioning. Next, we get into what is the requirement and gap infrastructure. So what we did for this is we actually calculated floating population. There is a norm set by Swachh Bharat Abhiyan also to be able to generate this floating population. Then we looked at the Paura Karmikas. This is also some data available by BBMP to say what are the number of Paura Karmikas. There we got the total number. Then we have calculated based on the normative standards what is the required number of seats. We then look at what is the existing number of seats in these toilets. Then we look at the gap. So you realize that even though my toilets exist, they are insufficient. And so we actually don't have enough of representative public toilets. So even if, like, especially like you see for women, and men, it's at least urinals, which is why also you see multiple. Of course, 40 urinals is very tough to give, but I mean, if you look at it, our number is 9 urinals. So there is a huge gap. I mean, you may not even if you give 20, that will be great, but 9 is too less, right? And if you look at for female also, you've got 7 missing thing, which is my larger Paura Karmika group is basically women. So where do they actually go if they don't actually have enough toilets? Next. So this is the community toilet piece. So here again, it's basically they need a seat for 35 men, 25, 1 and 25 for women, and bathing facility. So this is the add-on when it comes to my community toilets. Next. So here we looked at all the slums. We looked at, is there a community, because there's a lack of community toilets in Bangalore in general. We've looked at, is there a community or public toilet within a 500 meter? So obviously here I can't keep 1 kilometer. I have to keep 500 meter because this is near their houses, right? And we realized that only one has community toilets. For the others, even the public toilets are not accessible. Hence, you see the correlation of open defecation being practiced. So we saw that at least the slum that had a community toilet, there was no open defecation practiced. And you see, okay, where exactly is this practiced? Yeah, Parna, coming to your point, is there precedence of having community toilets? Precedence is it needs to be in a slum. There are different models for where you can keep, how you can put a community toilet. It doesn't have to be, say, for example, if I have a slum that's maybe even on a private land or anything like that, there are still ways of going about it where you do this. I don't know if you guys have seen this, the Paura Karmika toilet that they made out of a container. So it's a makeshift sort of toilet in the sense that you can move it if you would like, need to move it. And these actually, there's so many designs for it. So you actually need to have this based on mapping. So once we say that, okay, do they have accessibility or not? The second exercise would be to say that, okay, within this radius, where can I locate it? So it's sort of to say that because the distance is meant to be within 500 meters of that slum, we need to then find out where it can happen. So this will become a micro level of planning with the government officials to say, okay, now let's start seeing where can I locate it? I know that it does not exist within this walkable distance. Next. So this was the community toilet that existed. So that was the only one we could evaluate, obviously. So we realized that, I mean, you had WCs that were used by both male and female. There were no urinals that were there. It needs upkeep. Definitely, just by looking at this photo, you can see that it needs upkeep. And it was not disabled friendly from any direction. Next. So this was actually looking at the requirement and the gap in the infrastructure. So you see that the community toilet, and you see a proper correlation in this one ward itself, right? So you see it meets the requirement. There's no open defecation practice. So all of that is sufficient. But you see the requirement that is needed in the other, 5 slums. And even like, I mean, look at the slum that's got 300 households. That is a notified slum. It still does not, being there for 30 years, and it still does not have a community toilet. This is the one next to a railway line, right? Let alone the other smaller slums, right? Next. So sort of we put them in scenario 2. The reason being that sanitation facilities are available to some commercial areas and slums within a walkable distance. It's insufficient, badly maintained, and open defecation is prevalent. So you know that if I have to get to scenario 4, I need to ensure all commercial areas and slum have community toilets and public toilets within a walkable distance, and it's as per the requirement and well maintained, and the ward is open defecation free. So you see that, okay, what you need to move towards is a very simple thing. It's just that how do we then break down and start doing that and identifying that, which is mainly going to be groundwork with government officials. Next. So this is coming to the budget, right? And I mean, if you looked at this and evaluated this, you'll think that, okay, well, they should have budgeted for public toilets or community toilets. However, you realize that that's not happened. The last 4 years, there's been no allocation of budgets for community or public toilets. Even the ones that they have, in fact, they have said 2 public toilets in Malesh Palya, we realized that there is only 1 on ground. So where did this second public toilet disappear? Nobody has any idea, right? So you also sort of see that there is certain, these issues of saying what happened and what was spent and what actually ended up happening on ground is also a big question which comes around when we do a budget analysis. along with this physical mapping. And so you see that, okay, if I look at all of this, and I see that, okay, though the requirement is high, the problem is sort of also bad. There is barely any funds allocated to it. So this raises a question to say that, how do I look at this as a priority going forward in my next year budget? Or even once, as soon as I have my, say, for example, if I had to even place this as a first exercise to happen, over the next 5 years, just imagine the kind of impact that can happen in a very systematic manner. You have literally, I mean, the kind of budgets people get at a ward level goes anywhere from 3 crores, it goes up to even 8 to even 20 crores sometimes, which is the case of CV Ramanagar, where 1920, it was almost 20 crores, right? So the potential that can happen when you look at this year on year, when you actually build a systematic way of improving the ward, and you will actually see the change, because every year there can be an evaluation that's done of what is even come on ground, what exists, and as a very simple way to see and ensure that things actually move in a systematic manner. Yeah, so I think that's about it, Ramas. Happy
Yeah.
to take any questions.
Just first off, brilliant approach. Big round of applause to all
Thank
of
you.
you. And I I don't know. We should get Usha's input, because Usha's seen many meetings around things like this. Usha, what do you think about this? Subhashini would.
You're new, Tusha.
Yeah. I think this is the first time we've gone into so much of depth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Subhashini?
Yeah, excellent. I'm in tune with whatever she's saying. It's the right approach.
Yeah.
I think there's a win-win situation, and but we need volunteers. That is the biggest challenge, to get people out of to get to do some volunteering work.
Yeah.
So Subhashini, see, I found that, when, the vision is strong and there's a comprehensive plan, an action point, then it is easier to engage volunteers.
Yes, half the battle is won, right?
Yeah, because we run out of steam with the way that we are approaching, right? In the sense, we don't make any progress. There's no common agenda. We're not
I
singing
agree.
from
I
the
agree.
same songbook, or,
Also, one other thing that we realized working with, we worked with quite a few wards
I
now, and we're
agree.
sort of
Totally.
expanding that. The thing is, you'll end up having 3 to 4 core people. These are the guys leading the exercise. I need 15 to 20 volunteers only on 2 days, which is really, it becomes a very focused exercise where you engage them, and where they also feel like they have to spend only, literally, we've realized people can spend maximum 1 hour on ground. Anything more than that, nobody will be able to give time, right? So for that 1 hour, I have to keep it as engaging, so that they also are able to understand. And then we do one discussion when the draft presentation is up. That can be an online discussion. So you just come in, and so your perspective, because you've gone and assessed certain infrastructure, also comes to the forefront. So we realized that, in fact, when we did like even Ward 57 and Ward 45, what we realized is there were so many new people that came on board. There were professionals, urban planning professionals who lived in the ward, that came on board to participate, because for them suddenly this was like, oh, I can relate to this exercise. There were also, like, in fact, in Malleshwaram, we got a 15-year-old kid who came and did it, and I will in fact share he's actually written a piece on his experience of this, and it is amazing how he's articulated it. It's just that how a 15-year-old can even comprehend the fact that, okay, I'm looking at my public toilets, I'm looking at my education institute, and they are not enough, and this is what needs to be done. So I think, like, the age also doesn't matter, because this exercise is a very simple exercise, but it will start opening people's eyes to notice a lot more, just by the mere nature of the kind of data we're collecting. So we do try to load ourselves on with most of the groundwork, so that the assessment becomes a very easy exercise. So that is not something, and that's, for Ward 57 was our learning experience for that, because Ward 57, what we try to do is, we try to do even our mapping with the volunteers, and we realize it's very cumbersome. People lose interest, after a time. But when it comes to assessment, that's something people are very interested in doing. Also very targeted, very focused, so it's very easy. So 45 became a very interesting exercise after that when we did, because we spent a lot more time on actually putting this. So I built a team of at least 2-3 people on my end to be able to do that first level thing and to, organize and manage this whole thing. And then the citizen volunteers come in for just that two-day period to actually, come in and actually assess and stuff like that.
Very good.
Do you have an idea of how long it will take to get the agenda implemented? I know you're at early stages with your.
So in the sense, like if I give you an example, for example, Ward 45 and Ward 57, for both of these wards, we've already shared these presentations with the nodal officers. Ward 57, of course, that's Mr. Randeep. So he's more accessible to us. So we managed to share it out, and he sort of also appreciated it to a huge extent because he was looking at the ward more closely. With Ward 45, we are meant to have a meeting with Mr. Manjunath next week. We have also shared the presentation with him because we've just finished our meeting with the volunteers to reassess changes in the draft presentation. So that's just been submitted. So with Mr. Manjunath, in fact, we had shown 57 presentation and he really liked it also. But of course, these both are nodal officers who are IASs, right? So we have to understand that all my other nodal officers are not IAS officers. So that a thing to be able to get them on board may be slightly tougher to do this. However, what we are realizing is if this becomes a way of strengthening the ward committee, even if it does not get taken in this time's budget, and we give ourselves, okay, saying that let's do this so that we can influence the next time's budget, or even going forward, we are able to keep a track. That's something that can start along with ward committee members,
So, I mean, a rough estimate would be that this is like a 5-year implementation plan or so, if we have to kind of look at it.
It's a baseline. How you choose to act on it will be over 5 years. So
Sure.
you can say that, okay, this year we will just look at public toilets and maybe some other 2 things that we know are easily done, right? And maybe the next year I may pick up something else because it's slightly more tougher to do, or I need a larger budgeting. Also, you will not get budgets to do everything in the first year, right? So that will be something that has to happen with the nodal officer, of course, which is if we have the new corporator in place or if it's the current nodal officer who's there, where the prioritization of it has to be done with the team. So the idea is the prioritization has to come with the government officials because they will tell you, okay, this is possible, not possible. Can I push this right now? Can I push it later? How much can I negotiate if I have a bucket of fund available? So all of this, the costing they will have to do and say, okay, what is it going to cost for us to actually, put these many public toilets or community toilets or etc.
Sure. I think Subhashini had a question.
Sure.
Subhashini, were you asking something? Subhashini, we can't hear you. Subhashini, for some reason, we can't hear you.
She's logged out.
Okay.
No, it's my internet connection is a little bad. Okay, just want to find out, Shobhya, how long would it take for you to collate all the data?
So this is a 1-month exercise. Like in
1
the
month,
sense,
okay.
yeah, it's a 1-month exercise, starting from when we will get the data and all of that. So for us, including our work, base work, plus the mapping and the report, which is like 3 weeks that Naveen said is effectively what we look at. But I do understand that it takes time to, once the draft presentation is shared, to get everyone's time, get feedback in, update that takes a little more time. So I would put it at a 1 month at an outer end, but otherwise 3 weeks.
Okay, good. Thanks.
So what is the outer limit of how much it would cost us to do this?
So we just have to, the thing is, once we understand what kind of team we need to put in our place, so we'll have to just go through the area of the ward to see, because like I was saying, Malleshwaram and CV Ramanagar were fairly small. So I could, sort of cover it with just maybe 1 or 2 people that were there volunteering on it. So for that, a ward like CV Ramanagar costed us somewhere around 1 lakh, where we looked at the whole ward and the mapping because that was for our team cost. So we'll just have to evaluate based on the area. And if I need to also to say that, okay, how much of support do we need to build in on my end versus how much will come from the community will help us. So I would say it'll be around 1 to 1.5 at the upper limit, not more than that.
Okay. The other one is when you started off saying that we need to create a core committee. Do you have
Yeah.
any kind of profile which you've seen works, where you get the people consistently coming in?
So actually, so if I give you an example, like CV Ramanagar was a ward that did not have a very active community per se, but you realize that a lot of these people that came in from your gated communities or large apartments, right? So they also tend to find a lot more time. I think a lot more also aware and are passionate enough. That is one group of people that we found in all, right? I mean, in all the wards that we also work with. So people living in these sort of gated communities, you do find, because they have associations that exist, right? They'll all have their apartment association or resident associations, which are our first line of contact for anything, because they'll form the main part of it. The second line of contact has been, we've just sort of put out a call for volunteers, and it's been shared around, and we've had basically either young professionals or students come who live in the ward. So these two have been a very interesting group of, people that have come forward for this exercise, where usually you find it within those two.
See, the exercise I get, because that we can mobilize, I even keep them
Hmm.
engaged for even a month, 2 months, that kind of thing. But, what about the anchors of like the 5-year plan? And it might start with the core set of initiatives for 1 year,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
any kind of idea on who we can kind of induct into that kind of a committee?
In terms of types of residents, like that, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it depends on, say, for instance, like if I look at another ward, which is Dodanakundi, right? How they have approached their entire ward committee, even the composition of the ward committee is, there is Anu Govind who works extensively in waste. So she anchors waste as a vertical. There's Clement Jayakumar who works on any sort of transportation, mobility, those kind of things as focus areas. Then there is Dr. Amita who works with lakes. So they've sort of very interestingly, because theirs is a 12 square kilometer ward, also very big, right? So they have actually divided themselves by the problem area. To say, like, okay, somebody in SWM, somebody in lake, somebody in looking at transportation, transit, basic dealing with BBMP projects per se. So that has been a very effective way. However, in Malleshwaram, which is a much smaller ward, Malleshwaram has got Malleshwaram Social and Malleshwaram Swabhimana Initiative, both very strong citizen organization. They are the main compositions of the ward committee. So they, as groups that have been set up in Malleshwaram, do the groundwork of getting more people involved. But they ensure that they attend the ward committee meeting. One person will be there from both these organizations every time during the ward committee meeting. So they sort of then move. So it becomes easy for us to work with them, as opposed to go and work with the, go and find the nodal officer. That's not something we want to get into, because it's more, you guys are in a better position to question, as opposed to a person like us. I rather work back and empower you to ask the right questions.
Sure. Is there any sense in so see, Rotary is one thing that is organized across the city,
Yeah.
and they have representatives. Then what I've seen is all the religious communities have strong bearing. So for example, there is the whole that there'll always be a temple, for example,
Yeah.
and typically a lot of the temples have like a committee which kind of
Yes.
organizes a lot
Yes.
of things. You'll
Yes.
always have a mosque. You'll always have the church,
Yeah.
which is kind of broken up into provinces and things like that. Does it make sense to do some anchoring there also? Would they be people who would want to work for the community? Because prima facie, they do try to look at it. They're just not, formed in any way where they can come together and work together.
Yeah. So basically, how we've done this, so in Malleshwaram, we've gone ahead and set a neighborhood living lab. We're doing the same thing even for Dodanakundi, which is Ward 85. The idea of this neighborhood living lab is to say that apart from a plan making thing, can I start moving into interventions? And we've actually identified these stakeholders that you are saying, right? Whether it's temple or trusts, or whether it's looking at maybe other groups and organizations, women groups that are there, whether even with the Lions Club and like stuff like that, you have a lot of women groups also that are there. We engage them by project type or by area type. So in Malleshwaram, we're trying to do a pedestrianization exercise on 18th Cross, And for that, we have got on board our commercial association people. We've got on board the temple association. So it's easier to involve them when it comes to a project specific intervention where they are stakeholders.
Sure. Got it.
So yeah.
Got it. So be engaged with all the stakeholders from a tactical perspective.
Yes. Yes.
An intervention perspective, but you need to have a holding team.
Yes.
And that could be either a mix of community activists and anchors and people who've made it their living to work in the field.
Yes.
Or take it. Got it.
Or like, I mean, you're
because there are now lots of universities, right? I mean, there's, for example, CMR University, St. Joseph's College is becoming a university, Christ is becoming a university, has become a university.
Yeah.
Have you done anything with these sorts of people? Can they anchor along?
So in fact, Ward 85, when we did, it came out of an urban design studio that we did with CMRIT. However, what we find is the problem is universities are a little, like at this moment, at least with COVID, they're not ready to engage. Because the students itself are not coming right to college, so it's a bit tough to engage universities into it. However, we do realize that if you reach out to them, they are pretty open, because we had started this exercise even before COVID had happened with Ward 85, and in fact it was literally mid when we hit our lockdown. But the thing is, there is an opportunity we can approach, but the best way to approach it is if you have some connects within the universities. Otherwise, it becomes, universities have their own timeline, they're a little slower, right? What our urgency to do things on ground is not a university or a college's urgency. However, that being said, we have engaged students from Christ, we've engaged students from CMRIT, all of this through certain courses that they've had. Even St. Joseph's, right, is the same thing, because they have courses on environment, they have courses on thing. In that course, we opt for an elective and they do field work with us. So that is a possibility of engaging, most definitely.
The other thing is, I'm seeing that we get a facility also, na? We get a space that we can kind of meet regularly and have our community discussions and all that.
So like in Malleswaram, they do it in a school, in fact, actually, which is a girls' school, government girls' school that they have. That becomes a meeting place. For Doddanakundi, they've actually made it one of their gated communities, their park. So they allow people in. So we do all the community engagements there, and they organize for it. So absolutely having a physical space where you can meet and organize all of this is very important, which that maybe I think will change based on the rapport of the citizens there as well with these institutes.
Sure. So what would our next steps be?
So, I mean, at the outset, I think what we can do is we can sort of go through the ward profile a bit to just come back with what it would actually cost us to do this and what kind of team we would require to be in place. We can revert with that almost like in the form of a proposal, which we can submit. And maybe then also what you all can do is try to check this with the nodal officer. Is your nodal officer is active or is not really active? No, just he didn't turn up today, so I'm assuming not very active or interested. But is there any
nodal officer has no clue of what's happening?
Oh wow! But is he like is he from that ward or is he not from the ward?
She.
Okay.
We have no idea, but I can get details because she's so she lacks so much of this thing. You don't feel like asking her a question.
Oh, yeah. So is there a BBMP official little at a higher level, at a chief engineer level or a AWE level that exists at the ward level that you guys have interacted with and have a rapport?
Yeah, I have met with the AE, then the AWE. We also went to Joint Commissioner, Mr. Venkatachalapati.
Okay.
So we know these people are there. We met with them.
Okay.
Even this lady is, she's there, but not strong enough to take any action.
Okay.
To get anything implemented. She just says, I've already told them, wait, they'll do it. When we went to the JC's office, she said, Nodi sir, ಇವರೆಲ್ಲ ಬರ್ತದೆ 4 ಸೆಪ್ಟೆಂಬರ್ ಇಂದ ಬರ್ತದೆ ನಾವು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ನೀವು ಮಾಡಿ. So just pass the buck.
Yeah. No, what I would suggest is it will be good to identify that one BBMP official, even if it ends up being your AE or AEE, no problem, to just get them on boarded with the idea of doing something like this. Because even tomorrow when I have, like when elections happen, actually our nodal officers are an interim stopgap solution, right, at the moment.
Yeah.
They are not the main guys that are going to be anchoring, and they may not take, like in some cases, like I'm saying, IAS is taking interest because they are IASs, right? The rest of them, even like, I mean, Usha also knows, like what 45, like no interest, 65 because Manjunath is there, super interest. So you will see that change, and in fact both the wards, Malleshwaram lies in both the wards, right? So even the citizens are very conflicted, saying that one is not even reacting, the other one is ready to go ahead. But you can't treat it as two different wards because the area is one, it's Malleshwaram. So so that is something. But what they are using is trying to at least get. They've got a couple of these AEs that are good. So they've got this one guy, Papu Reddy, who's an AE, who is very good, has a very good rapport with the MLA. So trying to get him on board. And even if he's an AE, he may be actually in charge of a division, not only your ward, right? So in that case, what you can do is, if you at least get him on board and he says, okay, MLA support can come, or if there is some rapport that he shares with the MLA, that could also be one way of approaching it. So I actually, in fact, in JP Nagar, that's what 177, they had done exactly this. They have leveraged the MLA. Okay. And things happen. So MLA pushes whoever's in power to do it. So we have to find some mechanism to push the government system. Who that person is needs to be identified, to understand, okay, who can I actually push this agenda with, so that the exercise gets done and it's taken seriously.
So Subhashini, just a question for you. Today there's a ward committee meeting at 11, right?
Yes.
Should we bounce off this idea and see who's interested from the government to kind of onboard and take? Just
sure. We can do that.
So today I'll also come, and I guess I'll meet you for the first time also. But so my Kannada is very weak. But
That's
at least we can just test waters.
Yeah, sure.
And
in our case, I think in our ward, everything is around the MLA.
Yeah.
So it is a very funny situation we are, where he has nothing to do with BBMP. He's still involved in each and everything.
Yeah.
So, and people are petrified of him, to say the least.
That's the officials, is it?
All, everybody, even the citizens are so scared. They, if you talk to them, they say, "Oh no, we should go to the MLA." Like we have a road which is in a bad shape. Every time we take it up, they say that no, we'll go to the MLA, and we have met him umpteen times. Different layouts, different apartments have met with him, and he just has no concrete answer to give us. He just bows, like as if he's so subservient and all that acting, and then finish back to square one.
So maybe the idea is also a little bit down the line once this or induct him in saying like this, because that we'll approach it like this.
Yeah,
because
sure. We can.
Some of
we
the
can
MLA,
we can definitely try.
Yeah, they dilly-dally and they're all
you
over.
have a whole lot of cronies. You have a lot of cronies who you have to handle first before you actually go to him.
Yeah.
But I have noticed many a times I have called him on the mobile and he takes a call.
Yeah.
So he's approachable.
Yeah. So let's do this.
I called him and he going to office is like one. It's very difficult. They have like so many guys to it for you. I want to do something needs to be really looked into.
So we'll try and do as much as possible, like just getting them on board. We can't expect them to drive maybe the solution. Yeah, we'll get them on board. And later for some of the areas, this is Sobia, we look at PPP for, getting the solutions also. So for example, the toilets thing, there is a combination of between Sudha Murthy's foundation, Rotary, and a whole lot of others who want to do public toilets.
Okay.
And there are lots of community working teams. Like, I mean, something just offhand, like even something like a Swaraj Abhiyan, all these people would want to kind of do these solutions. but the anchoring is not very strong. You know, the blueprint of how we are all going to get everything to come together
Yes.
is not strong.
Yes.
So since you've got a good handle on this, we can bring in all those communities as well as.
Absolutely. You know, so this will actually help plug in even like CSR funds, right? So because if you look at budgeting to what end, budgeting is
Yeah.
government budgeting. But if I
Yeah.
know what's missing, I know where to channel my CSR funds also coming into the ward, no? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things we realized in CV Ramanagar, a lot of the government schools were all supported by one CSR company only,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
really good because they got it up to some standard.
Yeah.
All my government schools there, you know,
Yeah.
whereas you didn't find that in Malleshwaram. But
Yeah.
it had happened by chance, I'm assuming, that they've taken up
Yeah.
because they may be located in that ward. But
Yeah.
that's an amazing way to actually see how we can channel CSR money.
So also what we can try and do, because there is a, a small coalition which is formed to kind of look at, the work of NGOs and the
Right.
kind of work that they do. The thing is, you'll have a comprehensive angle to this. So we can approach 2-3 companies, I mean, like Azim Premji Foundation and a combination of them and Titan, to see whether they can also back the funding and the organizing of all these surveys. So let's look at
Right.
Koramabo as a pilot,
Okay.
keeping these folks informed,
Okay.
and they can get all their employees who are part of these wards and all that active in all of this.
Sure. Yeah.
And then we can see how they can channelize this, because
Yeah.
the funds definitely are there. The only issue is that they don't know how to kind of channelize it in a comprehensive manner.
Yeah.
So we can look at it like that. So we'll await your proposal. In the meanwhile, Subhashini and will, I guess, take the lead on seeing how we can create government buy-in, and we'll talk to some of the others. My area of work is more with colleges, institutions, and things like that. So let me start seeing if we can build in a team there.
Okay.
Anything else, Subhashini, that's coming
Sure.
to mind? I think we should also see, a core group, Subhashini, of, people who can take this forward, hai na? Or do you already have one? Subhashini, we can't hear you. Okay, I'll be meeting her anyway today at 11. And NBF, I think you all can take the role of anchoring this for us, because, if we can just dovetail to you all so that we can keep these meetings going. See, you all initiated it. I'm so glad that you all have done this meeting, I
We'll
think.
continue that, Aparna.
Yeah. And we can track it and, take it
And
forward
wherever we can assist you all too, we will pitch it. Not a-
with connects and things
Yes,
like that.
definitely. We'll do.
Super. So thanks a lot. Really good meeting. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Sobhya.
Thank you,
You,
Usha, for
Sophia.
organizing this. Thanks,
Thank you,
Aparna,
Sophia.
Subhashini.
Thank you, Naveen.
God
Very
bless
much.
all the beautiful work that you're doing. Really remarkable. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.